The authoritative Hebrew Bible text used by scholars today is based on manuscripts from around 1000 CE, but the oldest complete biblical book we possess, Isaiah, discovered in 1947, was copied 1,000 years before that and disagrees in hundreds of places. Not about meaning. About words. Where Isaiah 53 verse 11 in every printed Hebrew Bible reads, "He will see light and be satisfied," the Qumran scroll reads, "He will see light, no satisfaction, no completion, just light." He wrote, after the suffering of his soul, he will see light. No satisfaction. No completion. Just light. The word is missing. Not damaged. Not worn away. Just never written. For 2,000 years, the Masoretic text has been treated as the fixed, authoritative version of the Hebrew Bible. It was copied with such precision that scribes counted every letter, marked the middle word of every book, and destroyed any manuscript with errors. The assumption was that this tradition preserved the original words, passed down unaltered from antiquity. Then, in 1947, a Bedouin shepherd climbed into a cave near the Dead Sea and found jars containing scrolls that predated the oldest Masoretic manuscripts by 1,000 years. When scholars unrolled the Great Isaiah Scroll, designated 1QISA in the Discoveries in the Judean Desert series, they expected confirmation. What they found was variation. Not small variation. Not scribal slips. Whole words, whole phrases, whole theological implications hanging on differences that could not be explained away as copying errors. Take Isaiah 21, verse 8. The Masoretic text reads, "Then the lookout shouted, 'A lion, my lord, I stand continually on the watchtower.'" In 1QISA, the word is not lion. It is the seer. The entire image shifts. A lion roaring becomes a prophet seeing. One word. Two texts. Both ancient. Both carefully copied. Both claiming authority. Emanuel Tov, in his textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible, catalogues these variants with the neutrality of a coroner. He does not argue for one reading over another. He simply lays them side by side and notes that the Dead Sea Scrolls reveal at least three distinct textual traditions circulating in the Second Temple period, one close to the Masoretic, one closer to the Septuagint Greek translation, and one that matches neither. The scribes at Qumran were not careless. Their methods were as rigorous as the later Masoretes. They used guide dots, correction marks, and careful spacing. And yet their text of Isaiah differs from the Masoretic in over 2,600 places. Most are minor, spelling, grammar, word order. But some cut deeper. In Isaiah 2, verse 22, the Masoretic text commands, "Stop regarding man, in whose nostrils is breath, for of what account is he?" The verse appears in every traditional Hebrew Bible. In the Great Isaiah Scroll, the verse is absent. Not crossed out. Not marked for deletion. Simply never there. The scroll moves from verse 21 directly to what we call chapter 3, verse 1, without interruption, as if verse 22 had never existed. Was it added later to the tradition that became the Masoretic? Was it removed from the Qumran tradition? Both scrolls were copied by devout scribes who believed they were transmitting sacred text. Both communities revered these words as scripture. But the words were not the same. The Masoretes developed their system of vowel points and cantillation marks between the 6th and 10th centuries CE to preserve what they believed was the correct reading. But correct implied a fixed original to which they could point. The Dead Sea Scrolls suggest something else, that the text was more fluid, that multiple versions coexisted, that the Bible was not yet a singular object with closed boundaries. In the Psalms scroll from Cave 11, designated 11 QPSA, Psalm 145 appears with an additional verse between what we now call verses 13 and 14. The verse exists in the Septuagint. It exists in the Syriac Peshitta. But it does not exist in the Masoretic text. For centuries, scholars explained this as an expansion, later translators adding material. But the Dead Sea Scroll is Hebrew, not Greek or Syriac, and it predates the Masoretic standardization. The question reverses, was the line dropped from the Masoretic tradition, or never part of it? Tov notes that some scribes at Qumran appear to have been updating the text, not corrupting it, but bringing it in line with interpretive traditions developing in their community.
Euphemisms replace divine names. Difficult grammar is smoothed. Ambiguities are clarified.
They were not trying to deceive. They were trying to transmit what they understood the text to mean, not just what it said.
The same process, just earlier. The Masoretic text did this too. It standardized. It chose.
The difference is that the Masoretes had the power to enforce their choice, to make their version the version, while the Qumran scribes did not. Their scrolls ended up in jars, buried in caves, forgotten for 2 millennia. When they resurfaced, they carried with them the memory of a time when the text was still plural, when scribes in different communities could hold different words and still call them scripture.
This is not a story about corruption. It is a story about transmission. About the distance between speaking and writing, between writing and copying, between copying and canonizing. Every step introduces choice. Which spelling? Which synonym? Which theological implication? The Dead Sea Scrolls do not show us a degraded text.
They show us the text before it became fixed, when it was still breathing, still adapting, still multiple.
The Masoretic tradition gave us stability.
It gave us a text that could be printed, distributed, translated with confidence that every copy matched.
That stability has value.
But the scrolls give us something else, a glimpse of the Bible before it became the Bible, when it was still a collection of writings passed between communities, each community preserving and interpreting according to its lights. In Cave 4, fragments of Jeremiah show a version 15% shorter than the Masoretic.
Whole oracles absent.
Verses reordered.
Not a rough draft.
A complete, coherent text, just different. The Septuagint translation of Jeremiah follows this shorter version, which means Greek-speaking Jews in Alexandria were reading a different Jeremiah than Hebrew-speaking Jews in Jerusalem.
Both groups considered it scripture.
Both groups copied it faithfully.
But they were not copying the same thing. The question is not which version is right. The question is whether right is the right question. If the text was multiple from the beginning, if different communities preserved different traditions, if scribes updated and clarified and chose between readings, then what does it mean to call any version original?
The great Isaiah scroll sits in the shrine of the book in Jerusalem, in a climate-controlled case, lit from below, rotating slowly.
Tourists photograph it. Scholars study it.
But the scroll does not match the book they carry.
It never did. It was never meant to.
If the oldest manuscripts we have do not agree with each other, if the text was plural before it was singular, if scribes were making choices all along the way, then when you hold a Bible in your hands and read a verse, whose choice are you reading?